Christopher Littleton for my synthesis step 6 for my Spanish 201 course over the summer. I chose for my project salsa and its historical background, and I personally, the reason why I chose it was I love spicy food. I love salsa. I love them with my tortilla chips. I love them with the platters. I just love them. I love spicy food, and I thought, why don't I see where it actually came from? So, through my research, I found that the Aztecs grew they first started with tomatoes and with chili peppers. They were harvesting them, culturing them from wild tomatoes, and they came to tomatillos and chili peppers. They developed this into a salsa, which in Spanish is just sauce. So over generations, that became one of the main staples of the Aztec culture. You can find them in the Aztec market, and you can find salsa pretty much all over Mexico. You can find it in the Mayan culture and in the Incan culture. Some of the foods that the Aztecs had were the avocados, the tomatillos, the corn, which was a main staple of the Aztec diet. They used the cornmeal to make tortillas. They used it to make chips. They used it to do just about everything in their culture. And before salsa came along, they had the tortillas and beans, and they had the old ancient version of burritos, and when salsa was developed, that went perfectly with the burritos. They also developed the peppers, making it hot or mild, all depending on the pepper they used, and until the Spanish came, it was pretty much just limited to the Aztec and the Mayan and the Incan diets. When the Spanish came, they conquered everything, and they didn't write about the tomatoes or the tomatillos very much. That's very rarely mentioned, but when they brought all their food, the cattle, the pork, the chicken, the Aztec and Mayan cultures were able to incorporate all these foods into their foods and make more complex meals, which led to the modern day salsa being just about anywhere in the world that you want it, because it goes well with just about any food. The modern day, most salsas use tomatoes for their base, but I figured I would go with the ancient version, tomatillos. So now, I've already cut everything up. I did make another video, but I kind of messed that one up. So now, I've cut everything up, and I am going to mix everything and try this wonderful concoction. My curiosity, too, is I wonder how the ancient version of this tasted, because this modern day food has a lot of culture going into it. They've been specifically made to taste a certain way, to have a certain texture. I would really be curious to taste the old version as well as the new version, but don't have a time machine now. I am kind of happy, though, to be able to do a synthesis project on food. I've wanted to, but I just haven't had the opportunity to. Too many other interesting topics have come up, but I have loved the Mayan culture throughout. Learning about the Spanish culture in Mexico, it's just wonderful. I did my first paper on Mayan ritual sacrifice. It was quite an interesting one, but hard to find information on it. I thought there would be a lot more information, but sadly there was not. There's a significant amount of information on this, though. I was very surprised how much information there actually was on salsa and the history behind it. Just about every source I found had a little different of a tidbit about it. One had about the Spanish recordings, which I mentioned, how they barely recorded the tomatoes, but all of a sudden they're everywhere. They just incorporated it into their diets. Sometimes some of the most inconspicuous foods are spread out the most. And we will pause until I am ready to eat. Oh, and I kind of wanted to record this because these bad boys, I tried these peppers, and boy are they spicy. I put them in a little bit of noodles and chicken broth, and oh my gosh, lit me on fire. And I love spicy things, so I'm very curious to see what it tastes like in the actual salsa.